Good morning. The committee will come to order. Today, the committee will consider two more fiscal year 2026 appropriations bills, the defense legislation and the Labor, Health and Human Services, Education and Related Agencies bill. Following my opening remarks and those of Vice Chair Murray, we will vote on reporting these two bills. After those votes, the chair and ranking member of the Defense and Labor-HHS Subcommittee will present their bills and we will consider amendments. To date, our committee has considered and reported favorably 6 fiscal year 2026 appropriations bills with strong bipartisan support. Assuming the approval of the two bills we are considering today, we will have increased that total to 8 and addressed nearly 90% of discretionary spending. We will continue our markups when Congress returns in September so that we can report our remaining bills. We're also, as everyone here is well aware, working on a dual track. As this committee continues to report out bills, our first package of appropriations bills is on the floor of the Senate. I'm hopeful that we can complete work on that package before Congress leaves for the home state work period so that we can be positioned to have another package considered on the Senate floor when Congress returns. The appropriations process is the key way that Congress carries out its constitutional responsibility for the power of the purse. I again want to express my appreciation for Leader Thune bringing our appropriation bills to the Senate floor. Now, just a few comments on the funding bills before us today. First, we will consider the defense appropriations bill. Let me begin by commending Chairman McConnell and Ranking Member Coons for their outstanding collaborative work to develop a bipartisan bill that provides resources essential to support our men and women in uniform, strengthens our military services and the defense industrial base, and helps ensure that our country is prepared to meet the threats of dangerous adversaries. The bill addresses major funding gaps across the board. It invests in shipbuilding, including providing a critical down payment toward an additional DDG 51, the workhorse of the U.S. surface fleet, along with investments in additional Columbia and Virginia-class submarines. It expands critical munitions production, including air and missile defense interceptors, long-range missiles, and next-generation hypersonic weapons developed by our most innovative firms. It funds drone and counter-drone technologies, which are increasingly changing the nature of the battlefield. And it sustains security cooperation with close allies and partners whose growing defense capabilities are force multipliers for the United States and contribute to the deterrence of shared adversaries. Finally, the bill invests in our most precious asset, the men and women of our armed forces. It shows our continuing commitment to their readiness, well-being, and mission success. The second bill that we will consider is for the Departments of Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, and Related Agencies. This bill prioritizes funding to help make Americans healthier and supports life-saving medical research, including through targeted funding increases for Alzheimer's, cancer, Lyme disease, Parkinson's, ALS, diabetes, and rare disease research. The bill also supports families by investing in education and affordable childcare, which promotes financial stability for working parents and benefits our economy. It also maintains funding for TRIO, a program that I know from the experience in my state has made an incredible difference in the opportunities provided for many low-income and first-generation students seeking higher education. The bill continues funding for key priorities like the Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program and Job Corps. I want to express my deep appreciation to Chair Capito and Ranking Member Baldwin for their excellent work on this very important bill. Like the bills already reported by the committee, both of the bills before us today are bipartisan, member-driven products. Combined across just these two subcommittees, 95 senators, 95 of our colleagues submitted more than 11,000 requests to the committee for consideration. So this bill also reflects an enormous amount of work by the subcommittee members and their staff to go through those 11,000 requests from 95 senators. I would now like to recognize Vice Chair Murray for any comments that she would like to make, and again, express my pleasure with working with her. Senator Murray.
Thank you very much, Chair Collins. Really appreciate all the work you are doing on this, and the ability to work with you has been really great. So I thank you for all your work, and I want to thank Senator McConnell and Senator Coons, the chair and ranking members of the Defense Subcommittee, as well as Senator Capito, Senator Baldwin, the leaders of the LHHS Subcommittee, for all the work that went into these two bills that we're considering today. As I have said, these are not the bills I would have written on my own, but they nevertheless represent serious bipartisan work to make some truly critical investments in our families and country's future. From defense funding that supports our military and keeps our country safe, to funding for health care, child care, schools, seniors, medical research, public health, workforce training and safety, and many other programs that keep our community strong. The priorities laid out in both of these bills are fundamental to our nation's security and Americans' livelihoods and health. So I'm glad this committee was able to deliver and reach a bipartisan compromise to write these bills that deliver essential funds to help people solve problems and reject many of the absolutely devastating cuts and much of the chaos that President Trump was pushing for. It remains clear as ever to me we cannot afford to go down the path Trump and Russ Vought want to push us down. Their vision is one where this committee becomes less bipartisan and less powerful, where the president and the OMB director call the shots and some Republicans in Congress spend their time cutting what they are told to cut, even at the expense of their own constituents. Where instead of securing new investments for folks back home through bipartisan agreements, lawmakers have to plead their case to the administration to unlock funds we have already delivered or secure special exceptions for spending cuts. Where biomedical research and education funding gets held up for no reason at all, where we gut investments in working families while letting Trump's corruption run rampant, that's what Trump and Vought want, we can and we must reject it. Because there's no comparison between having a bipartisan process that gives our constituents a say in how their tax dollars are spent, or another slush fund CR that forfeits our power and lets Trump rob some states and pick winners and losers, regardless of what our communities actually need or the law says. The bills we are voting on today really show how big of a difference there is. Anyone who has doubts about that can just look at the LHHS bill. It rejects Trump's cuts that would have devastated our workforce to fight substance use disorders, HIV, and pandemics. It eliminated women's health investments like Title X funding and teen pregnancy prevention program, and essentially saw the CDC cut in half. It rejects backward proposals from Trump that would hurt our students and workers, like eliminating preschool grants or slashing Pell, or gutting our public school funding and ending Job Corps and AmeriCorps. It rejects efforts to gut agencies that protect the rights of patients, students, and workers. And I'm especially pleased to note it rejects Trump's 40% cut to life-saving medical research and increases the NIH budget by $400 million so we can continue to make progress against cancer, Alzheimer's disease, and so much more. To the scientists wondering if there will even be an NIH by the end of this administration, this committee's resounding message is yes. Congress has your back. We're not going to give up the fight against cancer, Alzheimer's, or rare diseases. We support you. We need you to stay here and keep this research going. But I want to be clear, at the end of the day, this isn't about rejecting Trump. It is about investing in our families, investing in our schools, in medical research, in workforce training, in community health. In fact, this bill even increases funding for crucial programs with new investments to allow the Social Security Administration to actually help people and undo some of the damage that Trump and DOGE have recklessly caused, and increased investments in childcare, something I will never stop fighting to make more progress on. Now, one thing this bill does not do, unfortunately, is fund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. As everyone knows, Republicans rescinded bipartisan funding we provided for CPB in the first ever partisan rescissions package. It is a shameful reality, and now communities across the country will suffer the consequences as over 1,500 stations lose critical funding. I really hope that Republicans will join us to restore this funding down the line, and I want you to know I'm going to keep pushing to do that. Now, before I close, I want to say I am clear-eyed. The investments we make in these bills today are really only half the equation, because the fact of the matter is we have an administration right now that is intent on ignoring Congress, breaking the law, and doing everything it can without any transparency to dismantle programs and agencies that help families. There is no magic bullet that will change that unfortunate reality. Our bills reject devastating cuts and reject many of this administration's more absurd proposals, like dismantling the Department of Education or destroying HHS and more. But I still hope we can do more when it comes to demanding accountability, transparency, and that this administration actually follows our laws. We all know President Trump cannot dismantle the Department of Education or ship education programs to other agencies. Authorizing laws prevent that. Appropriation laws prevent that. Yet that has not stopped him from shipping CTE and adult education programs to DOL in violation of our laws. And Secretary McMahon says she wants to do the same for Title I and IDEA. So I'm very glad that our LHHS bill takes new steps to make sure she cannot do that, and Title I and IDEA programs students depend on do not get dismantled or moved out of ED. But I'd like this bill to also do the same for every other education program that states administer, to prevent states from having to deal with the chaos of these dismantling efforts, and I'm disappointed there wasn't bipartisan support yet to do that. Still, I'm going to keep making the case for more accountability and transparency. We need members across the aisle to not only reject the cuts, but to speak up and speak out against what this administration is already doing to defy our laws and hurt the people we represent. Because as we speak now, Trump and Vote are holding up billions of dollars we have secured on a bipartisan basis. They are on course to impound billions of taxpayer dollars while agencies fail to meet basic requirements of law. Right now, they are illegally hiding apportionment data that would let us know whether funds we passed are being spent as intended and help us strengthen the bills we are in the middle of writing on. It is absurd that we have to mark up bills while being kept in the dark. And just this week, we learned Russ Vought, through a footnote, paused $15 billion in NIH funding. One footnote from an unelected bureaucrat overruling Congress and even NIH to block $15 billion in funding for things like cancer research. That is not transparency. It is not what Congress intended, and it is not acceptable. We need all of our colleagues to join us in insisting that all blocked funding gets out, not just the programs most important to them. So, in sum, these are critical, solid bills we're considering today that deliver vital funds for families and reject many devastating proposals. And while I, of course, would have liked to do more, I will not stop discussing how we can make that happen with my colleagues, and I will be voting yes to advance both of these bills today. I'm glad we're on track to continue making progress on bipartisan bills that reject devastating cuts and invest in our communities and in our global strength. So thank you very much, Chair Collins.
Thank you, Vice Chair Murray. I now recognize the Vice Chair to make the customary motions for the Defense and Labor-HHS bill.
Madam Chair, I move that the committee report favorably an original bill making appropriations for the Department of Defense for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes, and an original bill making appropriations for the Departments of Labor, Health and Human Services, and Education-related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes, provided that each bill be subject to amendment, that any amendment increasing budget authority be offset by a reduction of equal or greater budget authority, and provided further that the chair of the committee or the chair of the subcommittee reporting the original bill be authorized to offer the substance of the original bill as a committee amendment in the nature of a substitute to the House companion measure.
I note that we have a quorum present, and we will now vote to report the bill making appropriations for defense subject to amendment. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell. Aye. Senator Murkowski. Senator Graham. Senator Moran. Aye. Senator Hoven. Aye. Senator Bozeman. Aye. Senator Capito. Aye. Senator Kennedy. Aye. Senator Hyde-Smith. Aye. Senator Hagerty. Senator Britt. Aye. Senator Mullen. Aye. Senator Fisher. Aye. Senator Rounds. Aye. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley.
No.
Senator Coons.
Aye.
Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator Murphy.
No.
Senator Van Hollen.
No.
Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters.
Aye.
Senator Gillibrand. Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
Aye. On this vote, there are 24 ayes and 3 nays. The motion to report the bill favorably is agreed to. We will now vote to report the Labor, Health and Human Services, Education and Related Agencies bill, subject to amendment. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
Aye.
Senator Murkowski.
Aye.
Senator Graham.
Aye.
Senator Moran.
Aye.
Senator Hoven.
Aye.
Senator Bozeman.
Aye.
Senator Capito.
Aye.
Senator Kennedy. Senator Hyde-Smith.
Aye.
Senator Hagerty.
Nay.
Senator Britt.
Aye.
Senator Mullen.
Aye.
Senator Fisher.
Aye.
Senator Rounds.
Aye.
Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley. Senator Coons.
Aye.
Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin. Senator Murphy. Senator Van Hollen. Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters. Senator Gillibrand. Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
Aye. On this vote, there are 25 ayes and 3 nays. The motion to report the bill favorably is agreed to. Senator Haggerty.
Madam Chair, I would like to be recorded as a yay on the defense bill and be recorded as if I were here.
Without objection.
Thank you.
And have a new roll call. On the vote on the defense appropriations bill, there are 25 ayes and 3 nays. The motion to report the bill favorably is agreed to. We'll now turn to consideration of the defense bill. Again, I want to thank the subcommittee and its extraordinary leadership for working together and producing a strong bipartisan bill. And I also want to thank the excellent subcommittee staff for working to get the bill ready for this markup. I'm not going to repeat the comments I made in my opening statement describing the bill, but I would recognize Vice Chair Murray if she would like to comment further on the bill.
I just want to thank Chair McConnell and Ranking Member Coons again for working to put together this bill that really makes crucial investments in our military, not just in weapons and infrastructure, though we do have important investments to modernize our military and strengthen our defense base, but we also have investments to support our allies and strengthen partnerships across the globe. This bill does make crucial investments in the Indo-Pacific, Africa, Europe, and the Middle East, and rejects dangerous cuts to support our allies in Ukraine and the Baltics. This legislation invests in our most important security asset, our brave men and women in uniform, from a pay increase for service members to robust child care funding to new investments in preventing suicide and sexual assault and conducting life-saving medical research. So I really appreciate the work that went into negotiating these important investments, and I thank the work of all of the committees again.
I will now turn to the subcommittee leaders to say more about their bill, and we shall begin with Chairman McConnell.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. My colleague, Senator Coons, and I worked closely together and have similar views about the condition the country faces with the rest of the world. Before giving my prepared remarks, let me just say again, I think not only the prior administration, but this administration as well, have underestimated the level of challenge that we have. You've got authoritarian regimes coordinating with each other, the North Koreans, the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranian proxies, all communicating. And the one thing they have in common, they hate us, and they want to replace the role that America plays. And so we've tried as much as we can underneath the top line to do what the two of us felt was a better job of trying to deal with the reality of the situation. So I want to thank all the members of our subcommittee. This was a very, very complicated effort to try to get beyond where we have been under this administration and the previous one. Year after year, we've failed in many ways to provide for the common defense. This bill recognizes the administration's intention to restore peace through strength, the Department of Defense's desire to achieve drone dominance, and the President's interest in having more missiles than any other country. It reflects the need to build more ships for a Navy that must compete with China. It acknowledges that America's adversaries are increasingly aligned and investing more heavily in undermining our interests, and that America must take the risk of simultaneous conflict in multiple theories seriously. But ultimately, our top-line allocation of $852.5 billion, which sits higher than either the President's budget request or the House mark, underscores that we cannot seriously address these challenges while artificially constraining our resources. We can't build a Golden Dome or restock our munitions or bring back American shipbuilding without sustained increased investments in all of our national defense. And we can't treat reconciliation like a cure-all. I was glad to vote for the one big, beautiful bill, but let's not kid ourselves. It was not the additive defense spending some of us had hoped for. Moving must-pay bills for major long-standing programs from base to reconciliation still makes little sense to me. And somehow the process seems to have also allowed important programs to slip through the cracks. In fact, senior Pentagon officials have already come to me and my colleague, Senator Coons, to report that there's still billions of dollars short on programs that we were told reconciliation would address. So the point is, there's no substitute for robust, full-year defense appropriations. And this is a strong bipartisan bill that proves we can do our job and keep our commitments to the men and women of the U.S. military they deserve, no less. Here are a few of the items we address. First, recent operations in the Middle East illustrate how quickly modern warfare can exhaust our arsenal of critical munitions. The administration's request did not fully maximize production capacity for certain critical munitions. So we added $5.2 billion to buy larger quantities of air defense interceptors, long-range fires, and other key munitions. We also added $2.1 billion to expand production capacity of munitions and included some important initial investments in restoring America's organic industrial base. Second, we also added $4.6 billion to addressing growing demand for more extensive air and missile defenses. But developing a more layered missile defense shield that can protect the homeland and our forces abroad from growing threats is going to take years of sustained funding. Third, we've tried to help the department meet requirements that the final reconciliation bill and the fiscal year 26 budget requests left unfunded, including advanced procurement for Virginia and Columbia-class submarines, costs to compete for surface vessels, major renovations to dilapidated Marine Corps barracks, and ship operation costs for our Navy. We also included more funding for destroyer construction, shipyard infrastructure, and workforce development to help fix our ailing shipbuilding industry and get production back on track. Fourth, we invest in ally and partner militaries. We know that confronting Chinese aggression will require collective deterrence, helping grow our friends' capacity to defend themselves in the Indo-Pacific, as in Europe or the Middle East, actually enhances deterrence and helps our allies share more of the burden. It also means more investment in interoperable U.S.-made systems, and lower risks for U.S. service members. These are investments that pay dividends, and I'm not just talking about treaty allies. Secretary of the Army rightly calls Ukraine the Silicon Valley of warfare. The Navy considers the maritime fight between Russia and Ukraine as the Black Sea Battle Lab and recognizes the need for rapid innovation. So we added $216 million on top of the administration's request for drone and counter-drone capabilities consistent with the intention of achieving drone dominance. But abandoning the foremost experts of drone warfare would be strategic self-harm. Shutting off engagement with Ukraine would undermine our military's efforts to prepare for the modern battlefield. So, like our friends on the Armed Services Committee, we are restoring funding for the Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative and other security assistance programs that make America safer. So, Madam Chair, I'm proud of the work of the Defense Subcommittee in producing this bill for our colleagues' consideration, and I hope it'll earn the support of the entire committee. Allow me to close with just one more note. None of the challenges we're facing today can be solved by a single bill over the course of a single budget cycle. Readiness is not a box to be checked. It's a state to achieve and to maintain. In this era of major power competition, security for future generations of Americans means the following: steady, consistent, predictable, increasing investments in our common defense, year after year after year. If we're tempted to treat successful fiscal year 26 appropriations like a finish line, we're thinking about our obligations all wrong. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Chairman McConnell. I would now turn to the ranking member, Senator Coons, for his statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I first want to thank Chairman McConnell. He has been a great partner this year, and our working relationship on this important bill is what I think the American people would be proud to see out of their elected leaders. We see eye to eye on today's critical national security challenges: deterring China, standing with Ukraine, standing up to the increasing coordination of the People's Republic of China, Russia, Iran, and the DPRK, maintaining our asymmetric advantage of our global network of allies and partners, and modernizing the DoD with a sense of urgency because the clock is ticking. That is not to say that this has been easy tackling these problems. The administration submitted the latest budget in history. We received some official budget documents last Friday, and others are still missing. And for the first time in history, the administration decided to split its request into discretionary and budget reconciliation sections, which, as the chairman has noted, has not worked well. This decision and OMB's inability to explain it thoroughly and the challenges the Armed Services Committee faced as a result subjected our national security to an uncertain partisan process, but also ended up creating $10 billion of shameful mistakes and disconnects that were utterly unnecessary. We've also, frankly, had to deal with a Secretary of Defense more focused on fighting culture wars than deterring real ones, and a Director of National Intelligence too focused on distributing disinformation than supporting unbiased analytic work. It has been hard to get answers to basic questions and to figure out the best ways to use this bill to invest in and help expand the capabilities of our military and intelligence community. Time again, when we did get solid or timely information, it was our professional military and career civilians who got it to us. This bill is better because of them, and I thank them for it. In summary, the bill before the committee recommends $852 billion for DoD and our intelligence community, an increase of $21.7 billion or 2.6% above the fiscal year 26 request. This bill reduces waste and duplication by making hundreds of cuts to underperforming programs and realigning those billions of dollars in savings into higher priority programs. Let me just make a point here about rescission. Rescission accomplished by a party line vote outside the appropriations process is corrosive to our role and to trust. But doing it this way, oversight, rescission, and reallocation of billions of dollars within the appropriations process is constructive. And anyone who wants the details of the rescissions and reallocations that were accomplished through this bipartisan process, I'd be happy to give you those details. One of my highest priorities was our allies, and this bill delivers. Thanks to the chairman's leadership, we restore aid to Ukraine and add additional funds on top for $800 million and restored $225 million in security assistance to the Baltic states, which the request had cut. These allies are on the absolute front line of resisting Russian aggression, and we are learning critical lessons about the future of warfare, as well as standing with those who fight for freedom. Learning these lessons from Ukraine, we include critical change in the Army's budget, most notably funding their shift to rapid, affordable, attritable UAVs and counter-UAV technologies. We also made lots of improvements in the underlying request. Given the challenges with missile stockpiles that we're seeing in Ukraine and the Middle East, I can't explain why the administration didn't propose to buy every single missile it could on existing production lines and expand others, but it didn't. So we took the savings that we found to buy $5 billion more in munitions because we must increase our nation's magazine depth. We make significant investments in shipbuilding, especially submarines. We restore next-generation platforms like the Navy's sixth-generation fighter and the Air Force's E-7 early warning aircraft. Again, I can't explain why the department wanted to wait on Navy fighters or Air Force early warning programs, or why submarines were cut in budget reconciliation, but we identified these issues and addressed them appropriately. We also make significant down payments on readiness across the services. Once again, I can't explain why the administration continues to raid these accounts for unrelated immigration enforcement, or why budget reconciliation cut these accounts, but we have added funds for readiness and training. As the chairman mentioned, $1 billion for the Marine Barracks 2030 program, which the Armed Services Committee left out of reconciliation. We also added a 3.8% pay raise for the entire military, as well as other quality of life initiatives that I think we value as we invest in military families as well. We got rid of the basic housing allowance for service member and families 95% and raised it to 100%, a 6-year-old problem, and we fully fund the child care fee assessment program. In sum, this bill recognizes we're confronting a world more dangerous today than at any time since the Cold War, that we all need to focus, put politics aside, and get to work. I urge this committee to support this legislation. As the chair referenced, 95 senators filed 11,000 requests. I want to thank and recognize the subcommittee staff who assisted the chairman and me on this bill. The buck stops with us, but the staff at our direction conducted critical oversight of DoD and the intelligence community, bringing to us what they found. I want to thank the members of my staff, Gabriella Armanda, Dylan Bird, Abby Grace, Bridget Kolish, Rob Leonard, and Ryan Pettit, and thank Chairman McConnell's staff, Rachel Dapieve, Laura Forrest, Megan Handel, Cole Hodge, Robert Karam, Alexa Lorick, Todd Phillips, Kim Segura, Cole Spiller, Tom Schaefer, and Elise Stiebeck. Every day this year, these two teams have worked together seamlessly to do the right thing for our national security. Their long nights and weekends are why we are ready to proceed with this bill. I hope they get some sleep. Last, I hope my colleagues will consider what our legacy will be. We cannot run our national security on a continuing resolution. Please join with the chair and vice chair and the chair of this subcommittee in supporting all of our appropriations bills. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Vice Chair Coons. I see that Senator Gillibrand has joined us. And before we turn to the manager's amendment, I'd like to give her an opportunity to be recorded if she wishes to on the passage of both the Defense Appropriations Bill and the Labor-HHS Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would like to be recorded as a yes on the defense bill and a yes on the HHS bill.
Thank you. On the defense bill, there are now 26 ayes and 3 nays, and the motion to report the bill favorably is agreed to. On the Labor-HHS bill, there are now 26 ayes and 3 nays, and the motion to report the bill favorably is agreed to. I will now turn to Senator McConnell for a manager's package.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You have the collection that makes up the manager's package that we've worked through on a bipartisan basis. This package has been negotiated and agreed to, as I indicated, by both sides. I ask that it be adopted by unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Without objection, the manager's package is agreed to. Are there members who wish to offer an amendment to the bill? Senator Shaheen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are distributing the Shaheen amendment. I don't know if there's a number for this amendment, but it is just 2 lines, and it says, none of the funds appropriated or otherwise made available in this act or any other act shall be used to operate or modify a Boeing 747-8I transferred from Qatar. Since it was announced in May, I think many of us on this committee have been trying to determine the exact cost of retrofitting the Qatari royal family's gift of a Boeing 747 jumbo jet to President Trump. In addition to the security and ethical concerns with accepting a foreign gift of this nature, there are real issues around the cost of this retrofit that have not been explained, as well as whether once that is, how long it will take, and once that's done, whether in fact it will be as secure as Air Force One, which, as we know, is currently being completed by Boeing. It's been reported that the jet could cost up to $1 billion for necessary security controls, but we've not been able to get an accurate estimate from the Air Force, and they've continued to downplay the full cost. When I asked this of the Secretary of Defense at the hearing, he told us that that number was classified. But finally, during the Air Force Secretary's testimony to the Defense Subcommittee this year on the Air Force budget, he admitted for the first time that the funds to upgrade the Qatari plane were reprogrammed from the nuclear modernization budget, specifically from the Sentinel program. Now, it's been reported that this transfer was done through reprogramming authority that was granted to the Department of Defense in the continuing resolution, and that it could be at least $900 million. I understand, like others on the committee, that the Sentinel program is over budget, but I think it weakens our credibility to take funding from nuclear modernization and move it into a project that there are still serious unanswered concerns about how much money it's going to take, and whether it would, in the end, give us a plane that is going to be as secure as Air Force One. So that's why this amendment, I hope the members of this committee will consider it carefully, and I intend to vote for it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Chairman McConnell.
Well, this jet was just delivered to the Department of Defense. Would need to have a classified briefing to understand any proposed modifications and the risk of not applying them. the aircraft timeline is such that it's not going to be modified with fiscal $26 in any event, making this a poison pill for political amendment better suited for the NDAA. Therefore, I would recommend a no vote.
Are there other members who wish to speak? Senator Coons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I might briefly, I want to thank Senator Shaheen for offering this valuable amendment to prevent the department from using nearly $1 billion in taxpayer funds to retrofit the Qatari Royal plane to serve as a temporary Air Force One. As she mentioned, it raises both security and ethical questions. And the White House took advantage of the lax standards of the FY25 continuing resolution to push through a vanity project. Funds for the department should be used for our nation's substantive defense, not a flashy object that boosts the president's ego. I urge my colleagues to vote yes.
Senator Reid.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I, too, support Senator Shaheen's amendment. I believe Senator Murphy has an amendment on this topic, too. I was at the subcommittee hearing, and I asked the Secretary of Defense directly, can you tell us the top-line number for the reconfiguration of the aircraft and the delivery date? And he told us, no, it's classified. You know, that's ridiculous. If it's classified, I wouldn't classify it as secret. I'd classify it as embarrassing, because it will cost at least $1 billion, at least $1 billion. And it probably will take 1 or 2 years to complete this aircraft. And we all know where this is headed, to the President's library. A fully functional aircraft, which is going to be delivered to the President's library, which I presume he will use with the permission of the library, although the library will pay for it. This is completely, I think, unacceptable. It's never been done before by any president. To stop it now, I think, makes sense. Senator Murphy's suggestion, I think, is that at least it spends its useful life in the Department of the Air Force where it should. This is being transferred to the Air Force. But as soon as the president leaves office, a functionally useful aircraft is going to accompany him. The only precedent I think we have here is the aircraft at the Ronald Reagan Library in California, and that was completely stripped of its engines and everything else, so it could be a model, a display. That's not the intent, I think, of the president right now. He wants a free plane when he leaves. So I would very strongly urge that this amendment be passed, and if not, Senator Murphy's amendment be passed. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Senator McConnell, then Senator Mullen.
I just wanted to say to my good friend, Senator Reid, I'm proud of the fact that the NDAA passes every year, but this bill has to be signed, in order to fund what we believe is in the best interest of the country.
Senator Mullen.
I have a tremendous amount of respect for the ranking member, but I think the narrative that you're drawing is just not factual, sir. That has not been said. The president has never came out and said he's putting this in the library. He said it in a joke one time, but the truth is that because you've been in the briefing, I've been in the briefing, they actually talked about using this particular plane for the vice president in the next presidential election, or the next president that sets President 40, whoever the 48th president of the United States is. They're talking about using the current one that has been in the air for over 35 years to possibly be retired and go in the presidential library. You and I sat in that same conversation, that same briefing. And so the narrative that you're drawing is just not factual. And then the plane itself, for those that don't know, but those that do know, because there's a few of us that was in the briefing that was on the armed services, this plane was offered during the President Biden's administration. They actually started negotiating this in August. And I was in Qatar when the Prime Minister originally talked to me about it. I came back and actually talked to our committee about it at the time, because there was an issue on how they could actually do it, if it could be a gift or it could be a transfer, or if the Department of Defense could take it or it could go straight to the executive branch. That conversation happened. And so the narrative that you guys are drawing just isn't accurate. And I wish if you guys are going to have concerns that you actually speak from it on a actual perspective, not a political point. Now, if we want to talk about dollars and what it's going to take to retrofit it, fine. We can do that. But the current Air Force Two is also completely outdated, and the current Air Force One is completely outdated. So what are we supposed to do? Keep flying old airplanes? I just want to know what the solution is here.
Senator Murray.
Well, thank you very much. Look, I think that President Trump's decision to accept this foreign plane is really an outrageous bribe. Under no circumstances should our taxpayers be on the hook for this massive cost to modify and use a foreign plane as Air Force One. The funding that Congress appropriates in this bill should take care of our service members and provide them with cutting-edge capabilities, not spent unnecessarily to retrofit a royal plane. This is massively wasteful, and actually the next generation Air Force One is already in the pipeline. And I also, by the way, think it is a huge security vulnerability on this plane. This amendment that the Senator's office offers would prevent the Department of Defense from wasting any more precious taxpayer resources on a truly corrupt and, I believe, wasteful endeavor. So I hope my colleagues vote yes.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really have a dog in this hunt. I think, like Senator McConnell, we ought to be driven by the numbers. And in order to be driven by the numbers, you've got to have the numbers first. But I've sat here this morning, and I appreciate the bipartisan words. But with all due respect, Madam Vice Chair, when you say that the President of the United States has been bribed,
I said potential.
that's pretty strong. When you say that the director of the Office of Management and Budget is corrupt, that's pretty strong. And I think if you're going to say someone has been bribed or someone is corrupt, you ought to be specific. And I notice you haven't been. And I don't think this is, I've listened to a lot of pretty words about bipartisanship, but then we get personal. I don't think it's productive. It's up to you. This is America. You can say and believe what you want. But if you're going to say somebody's been bribed, you need to say specifically by whom, for what. If you say Russ Vogt is corrupt, I want to know what that means, with all due respect.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I am going to be opposing the Shaheen amendment and perhaps others that may be introduced with regards to this aircraft. But I don't want my no vote to be assumed that I'm okay with where we are with this transfer, that I'm okay not knowing the numbers behind it, that I am perhaps okay with the appearances because I have concerns about them. But what I have is the utmost respect and regard for the chairman and the vice chair of this subcommittee that have executed a pretty strong defense bill. And I am going to vote no on this amendment, but that is because I think the imperative in passing this bill overrides any concerns that I may have now about where we are with this transfer of this aircraft. I just wanted that stated for the record. Thank you, ma'am.
Are there other senators who wish to comment? Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And my intent is not to derail the underlying bill. But it is, and I would say to Senator Mullen and Senator Kennedy both, I didn't accuse anybody of fraud. I said it raises serious concerns about the implications. And I would say to anyone who was on SAC-D, if you haven't read the classified information about what is going to be entailed in producing this plane, you need to do that, because there are serious questions that haven't been answered, and they won't give us answers. So my concern is aimed at the Secretary of Defense, at, as I said, we finally got some insights when we heard from the Secretary of the Air Force, who admitted that the money's going to be transferred from the Sentinel program, which is already a concern for us. So I think there are serious concerns that are raised. I don't want to derail this underlying bill. I think it's really important for us to pass it. But I do think we ought to be asking questions about what's going on here, because there are real ramifications for our military, for the Department of Defense, for our future. And I agree with you, Senator Mullen. We need to have secure planes for the President and Vice President to fly in. And what's going to be done as the result of this is not going to give us that secure plane. And spending $1 billion to do that, I think, is a real issue that we should all be concerned about. So thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to withdraw this amendment if there are concerns about it. But I do think we need to be paying attention, and we aren't currently.
I appreciate the withdrawal of the amendment. Are there other amendments?
I have a
Senator-
comment. I have a comment.
I'm sorry, Senator Reed.
Thank you very much. First of all, I hope my comments weren't interpreted. It's on. I got to get close. Thank you. I hope my comments weren't interpreted as questioning the legality or of anyone's activities. But the fact is that this aircraft has been thoroughly considered for donations to the President's Library. We all know that. And this is not something that's going to go in the Air Force and just be another Air Force aircraft. In fact, it's ABC reported, Attorney General Pam Bondi and Trump's top White House lawyer David Warrington concluded it would be legally permissible for the donation of the aircraft to be conditioned on transferring its ownership to Trump's presidential library before the end of his term, according to sources familiar with their determination. So the contemplation is very clear, and it's been documented. This is going to be transformed with Air Force money and then given to the library. I don't think that's an appropriate use of Air Force money. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Durbin.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I have an amendment which I'd like to have circulated to the Department of Defense bill. Madam Chair, this amendment would ensure the Department of Defense funding is used for defense, not as a blank check for the Department of Homeland Security. A few years ago, with the passing of Senator Inouye, I found myself surprisingly in a position of chairing this subcommittee. It is an enormous responsibility. I salute Senator McConnell, Senator Coons, and one of the best appropriation staffs on the Hill for putting together this massive work. But what they've tried to do, and was explained by both the ranking member and the chair of the subcommittee, is to take limited resources and make sure they're spent well to keep America safe. What I'm addressing here is a practice which many members of the Senate may not be aware of. This amendment addresses the practice where the Department of Defense is called on to loan money to other departments, sometimes reimbursable, sometimes not. This bill would prohibit the Department of Defense from supporting DHS immigration enforcement on a non-reimbursable basis. In other words, if the Department of Homeland Security is going to spend the money for that purpose, let them do so. But if they're going to borrow it from the Department of Defense, pay it back. Immigration enforcement should be no different than other agencies. For example, when we have a natural disaster and the Stafford loan is activated, we have had instances in the past where the Department of Defense has provided the money to pay off for that natural disaster with the understanding they would be paid back, except in extraordinary circumstances. So it is done, but it's done on a reimbursable basis. So let's take a look at what's happened so far. So far this year, in the last few months, the Department of Homeland Security has borrowed $900 million from the Department of Defense not to be reimbursed. $900 million. The estimate is by the end of this year, it will be $2 billion. What does that mean? Give you an example. How are we going to house people who are being deported? You can house them through DHS facilities, or you can house them through the Department of Defense. The decision was made, let's do it at Guantanamo. How does that sound? Well, let's take a look at what that is costing as an example. For 180 individuals to be housed in Guantanamo for the Department of Homeland Security on a 3-month basis costs $40 million. How much is that per night? $72,000 a night for each one of the detainees because they chose to put them in Guantanamo in a DOD facility and incidentally not reimburse the Department of Defense for the expenditure to do this. What if they used the DHS facility to house these individuals? How much would that cost, Senator? Less than $3.2 million for the same group of $180 million. Instead of a $72,000 a night place for them to sleep in Guantanamo, it's merely $7,000 a night. The point I'm trying to make to you is this going to be an expensive undertaking, this notion of massive deportation. It's going to involve moving around a lot of money in a lot of ways. Reconciliation already addressed some part of this. All I'm saying is that if you're going to borrow the money from the Department of Defense to pay for this massive deportation, pay it back. This money has been appropriated for the defense of our nation. That's how it should be spent.
Senator McConnell.
Well, we've certainly had a lot of back and forth about the border over the years. Well, here's the factual situation. Unchecked migration at the southern border represents, we would all agree, a national security threat. The administration's policies, including DOD support to the border, have helped dramatically curtail the threat. As a practical matter, this is a poison pill amendment, but even more important than that, it's a hypocritical one. You may or may not remember that the Obama and Biden administrations used DOD assets to support border and immigration activities. In fact, during the previous administration, Democrats not only used DOD to assist DHS, but objected to efforts to get DHS to reimburse DOD. This is also a political debate masquerading as a budget debate. So I would ask my colleagues to reject the amendment.
Are there further comments on the amendment? Senator Coons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, both parties support border enforcement and common sense immigration reform. DOD has been dragged, and service members have been dragged into a separate set of activities like paying for migrant detention centers or flying deportation flights that have no law enforcement on board. DOD's diverted hundreds of millions of dollars away from training and service members by reallocating these funds. As the former chairman of the subcommittee said, DOD's diverted about $900 million that this committee had appropriated for troops, and they admit it'll be in the billions before we're done. DHS was just provided $160 billion for these purposes. So there's no reason DOD should continue to provide this support on a non-reimbursable basis. There's lots of legitimate military needs we have to meet. I would encourage a yes vote on this amendment.
Are there other senators who wish to be recognized on this amendment? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
No.
Senator Murkowski.
No.
Senator Graham.
No by proxy.
Senator Moran. No. Senator Hoeven. Nope. Senator Bozeman. No. Senator Capito. No. Senator Kennedy. No. Senator Hyde-Smith. No. Senator Hagerty.
No by proxy.
Senator Britt. No. Senator Mullen. No. Senator Fisher. No. Senator Rounds. No. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed. Aye. Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley. Senator Coons. Senator Schatz.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin. Senator Murphy. Senator Van Hollen. Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters. Senator Gillibrand. Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
No. No. On this vote, there are 14 ayes and 15 nays. The amendment is not agreed to. Senator Murphy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I'm offering a slightly more tailored amendment as a follow-up to Senator Shaheen's amendment, and I would like a roll call vote on this amendment. This is an extraordinary amount of money to be used on a plane retrofit that will likely only be in service for a short period of time. Well, the administration has essentially refused to brief us on the full cost. Reports are that this number could be easily $1 billion. I know to us in the defense budget, that doesn't sound like a lot of money. To most Americans, that's a lot of their money to be spent on a plane that is not going to be in the service of the United States military and the United States Air Force for perhaps any longer than a few months, because the president has, in fact, stated his intention to take this plane with him when he leaves office. If Senator McConnell is right, and there are actually no funds being used in this coming fiscal year for the retrofit of the plane, that means that that work doesn't even begin for another year and a half, meaning that the plane is only going to be in service as this bridge plane for a handful of months. Senator Mullen, on May 12th, the President of the United States said this plane will, quote, go directly to my presidential library at the end of my term. There was no great chuckle from the audience after he said that. You may interpret that as a joke. It certainly didn't seem to be intended as a joke. And if that is actually true, that the intention is to transfer this plane to the president, then that is just an unconscionable waste of taxpayer dollars. $1 billion to pay for a plane that for 95% of its life will be used privately by the President of the United States. As to this question of corruption or conflict of interest, yes, we have historically had a bipartisan commitment in this Congress to prohibit gifts to high-ranking elected officials because it does create the potential for massive corruption and conflict of interest. And this is, if the plane is to be transferred to the president after just a few months of being in public usage, essentially a gift to him or to his presidential library. And so if that's okay, then are we all up for sale as well? Have we just stopped our bipartisan prohibition and concern for this level of gift to people in positions of influence? So I appreciate Senator Shaheen withdrawing her amendment. I'm trying to do something much more tailored, which is to say, even if we can't get consensus here that it would be a waste of money to retrofit a jet that may not be necessary, I would hope that we could at least come to a consensus that if we are going to spend that amount of money, if we are going to spend $1 billion of taxpayer money, that plane should stay in the service of the Air Force. And so this amendment simply says that this plane, after it is retrofitted, after it's been put in service, cannot be transferred to a non-governmental entity until the aircraft has served its full service life.
Senator McConnell.
As I indicated earlier, this jet supposedly was just delivered to the Department of Defense. It clearly is intended to support the president's travel and for the foreseeable future will be a DOD asset. We should not merely on rumors and speculation about what could happen years from now. We should be briefed on the long-term disposition plans before rushing to take action such as this, for which there's simply no urgency. The amendment is intended as a poison pill and political theater, better suited, I would say to my friend Senator Reed, for the floor vote on NDAA. So I would urge a no against the Murphy amendment.
Madam Chair.
Senator
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Barrasso.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just briefly, I think beyond rumor and speculation, that Senator Murphy just quoted the president firsthand with respect to his intentions. Second of all, to address this claim that's been made a few times, this is a poison pill. If I understand correctly, that means that the Senate would refuse to fund the Pentagon unless it allows the president to accept a jet from a foreign prince? If that's true, I'd like to understand why that is the line in the sand that would be drawn. The only other argument that I can conceive of is that we think the president would veto the entire Pentagon budget unless he's able to accept a jet from a foreign prince. I'd like to see him make that argument to the American public. So this is not rumor and speculation, it's the direct words of the president himself, and I find the notion that this would be a poison pill unpersuasive and baffling. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Are there other members seeking recognition? If not, the senator has requested a roll call vote, and the clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
No.
Senator Murkowski. No. Senator Graham.
No by proxy.
Senator Moran. Senator Hoeven. Senator Bozeman. Senator Capito. Senator Kennedy. Senator Hyde-Smith. Senator Hagerty.
No by proxy.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen. Senator Fisher. Senator Rounds. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Shaheen. Aye. Senator Merkley. Senator Coons. Aye. Senator Schatz.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator Murphy.
Aye.
Senator Van Hollen.
Aye.
Senator Heinrich.
Aye.
Senator Peters. Aye. Senator Gillibrand. Aye. Senator Assa. Aye. Senator Moran.
I vote no.
Chair Collins.
No. On this vote, there are 14 ayes and 15 nays. The amendment is not agreed to. Are there other amendments to the bill? Senator Merkley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to call up my amendment number 9. This is so non-controversial that it was included in the manager's amendment last year. It's simply asking the Defense Department to explain to us what, if anything, they're doing on the chemical 6-PPD. Now, this is something you may never have heard of, but on the West Coast, it turns out that after rainstorms, juvenile coho are dying, and it's been identified by a study in Washington State that the source is this particular chemical. There's no easy answer, so we have to puzzle over it. It's a major threat to our fisheries on the West Coast, a major threat to our fishing economy, the fishing communities, and we need to just understand it better. And there's a lot of activity that goes on in research in the department. We'd like them to share what they're finding, if anything, to complement some of the studies being done elsewhere. So no cost, just fill us in on what you're doing, if anything. And it's important to a major cultural factor in terms of our salmon, but also in terms of our tribal fishermen, our commercial fishermen, our recreational fishermen, and the entire sporting and commercial industry. Thank you. So I just ask it, and I'd be happy if others want to comment, but I'd be happy to take a voice vote.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And this is an issue that has been raised in my state. Obviously, we care a great deal about the health of our fisheries and salmon, and there's been a lot of questions about it. So as I understand the intent of the senator's amendment, it is just to direct DOD to do this review and study. That's the first step to important information. So I appreciate the senator bringing it before us, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to accept it as a reasonable opportunity to gain more information.
Senator Murray.
Just quickly, I want to thank Senator Merkley for offering his amendment and for his advocacy on this issue. We know from peer-reviewed scientific studies that 6-PPD causes serious harm to our environment, including our marine life, which is so important to all of us. So I look forward to DOD developing a report just outlining how it can limit the unnecessary use of 6-PPD, and I thank the senator for offering this amendment.
I, too, support this amendment. Senator McConnell?
I support this amendment as well.
Seeing no objection, I would suggest that we have a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it and the amendment is adopted. Are there further amendments to the bill? Senator Moran.
Madam Chair, I do not have an amendment, but I wanted to speak in regard to a provision in the manager's package at the appropriate time, and I may have passed.
I think that is now.
Okay. I want to express my gratitude to the subcommittee for inclusion of language, report language in the bill. But I want to highlight, in hopes that the Department of Defense is listening to this conversation, this markup today, and I think there may be other senators, including perhaps senators on this committee, who might face the same circumstance. But Kansas is the home of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red 1, Fort Riley, and 9 years ago, we opened a new Irwin Army Hospital at Fort Riley. It is state-of-the-art. It costs $380 million, and the Defense Health Agency is doing a review of military installation, Army installation hospitals with the potential of diminishing their operations to provide fewer services to members of the military. And this language requires heads up and notice to us 180 days before such a decision would be made so that we could respond appropriately. I'm working closely with the Army and the Defense Health Agency now. I appreciate their outreach and willingness to visit, but I wanted us as a committee to make clear that before we abandon or diminish the value of an asset, and in our case, a recent development, a recent valuable asset, and before we take the chance of not caring for soldiers, their families, veterans, and military retirees, that we ought to have something to say about this. And so I'm highlighting this, that it's in there so that somebody in the Pentagon is paying attention. I also have a hold on one of the officials whose nomination is pending to make sure we have a conversation and a recognition that more work needs to be done. Just maybe for the benefit of, I can't claim that I have any benefit for the committee, but for my benefit to say, the issue really seems to be not a matter. So they've done an analysis of Army hospitals, defense hospitals, and they claim that they're underutilized. And so I visited Irwin Army Hospital and spent time trying to figure out what the situation is, and the answer was, while we're authorized to serve not only active duty, we're authorized to serve their families, we're authorized to serve military retirees, and we're authorized to serve veterans. But oh, by the way, we don't have enough money and capability of hiring staff to do any of that, so we're only servicing active duty and some family members. And so now the Defense Agency determines that these hospitals are underutilized when the problem is they need to provide the staff to fulfill their mission. They also analyzed Fort Riley while most of our soldiers were deployed outside the United States to make a determination that the hospital was underutilized. So I'm an ally for anybody who would like to join me in this effort to try to make certain that we make, like, that the defense agency makes good decisions and that we have a role to play before the decision is made in that regard. And I thank Senator McConnell and Senator Coons for including that language.
Thank you. Are there any other members who wish to offer amendments? Seeing no further.
Madam.
What? Sorry,
Madam.
Senator Merkel.
Yes, I do have one more, and it is Merkley Amendment number 1. And I think folks are getting pretty familiar with this conversation, but just to summarize it, we anticipate we will have another rescission package sent to us here, and that will be something that will be under our jurisdiction. There will be probably a motion to bring it to the floor, but that will not involve FY26 funding. What this amendment addresses is solely FY26 funding, the bill before us, and says that when we do rescissions, we should do them in this committee. The bill that's under consideration right now, my understanding is, has about $3 billion of rescissions in it, carefully worked through by the Republican chair, the Democratic vice chair, and funds redirected to where they're more effective in our national security and our national defense. That's the model that I'd like to encourage us to stand behind in saying that any rescissions for what's in this bill will, in fact, be considered in this committee should in the future it look like that there are savings to be found. And I spent time in the budget office of Secretary of Defense office working on writing program and budget decisions. We studied every single program. We would hold hearings on them. We'd bring officers in to testify. We found tremendous savings in a very careful way, and that's the way the work is done. And when this committee staff and the leadership finds that, yes, that work is right, then those rescissions find their way into the bill here. So I encourage us to take a stand in support of our appropriations enterprise collectively, and say that the work done here today will not be undone through a partisan rescission on the floor. And, that could end up being, funds are multi-year funds. That could be a blue partisan rescission on the floor. So this is not about a particular administration behind. It is about the integrity of our congressional intent and our effort to have Democrats and Republicans working together to forge a plan for the best interests of the United States of America.
Senator McConnell.
My colleague from Oregon, I think, understands that I take this committee's authority to direct spending and Congress' power of the purse very seriously. And to the extent that the executive branch impinges on that authority, I intend to take an active role in defending it. But the best way for us to reassert our influence is to pass bipartisan appropriation bills, not play politics with poison pill amendments that only make the job a lot harder. As Chair Collins has previously explained on a number of occasions, this amendment is not germane to the Appropriations Committee, and should it pass it would create a point of order on the floor. I would encourage our colleagues to withdraw it so we can focus the limited time we have on things that are actually within our control.
I agree with Senator Merkley that rescission should be done through the appropriations process and have expressed that view very strongly. To the director of OMB, this bill is an example of what we do in virtually every bill with regard to rescissions. Nevertheless, the parliamentarian has confirmed that this type of amendment would violate the jurisdiction of the Budget Committee. Senate Resolution 445, which was adopted in 2004 and reorganized certain Senate committees, is clear that, quote, "the Committee on the Budget shall have exclusive jurisdiction over members affecting the congressional budget process," end quote, "including the process and determination by which impoundments must be reported to and considered by Congress. The Appropriations Committee does not have joint jurisdiction. The fact that our committee has primary jurisdiction over individual rescission bills does not change the fact that the Budget Committee has jurisdiction over the rescission process provided for in the ICA. So adopting this amendment would give rise to a point of order under Section 306 of the Budget Act, which makes clear that no bill, resolution, amendment, motion, or conference report dealing with any matter which is within the jurisdiction of the Committee on the Budget shall be considered unless it is a bill or resolution that has been reported by the Committee on the Budget. So for that reason, I must oppose this amendment today due to this jurisdictional issue and the ruling of the parliamentarian.
Madam Chair, I might add one comment if I could.
Senator Merkley.
I think this issue of jurisdiction is not as clear-cut as possibly presented, because this is not involving an impoundment, and it is the Appropriations and Budget Committee together that have joint jurisdiction over rescissions. And in fact, if we remember being on the floor on the rescission, when there were motions to refer it to committee, it wasn't to the Budget Committee, it was to this committee. It was to the Appropriations Committee. When the bill originally was drawn to the floor, where did it come from? It came from this committee, the Appropriations Committee. And this is a rescission, not an impoundment. But there will be more conversations about that. I understand the difference, the point of views on exactly what we're emphasizing. So I don't want to dwell on that too much more. But to say, if in fact there was a dispute over this that resulted in a ruling on the floor, this would be subject to a budget point of order, which takes 60 votes to waive. So if we put this into the bill, and if in fact the chair's understanding is correct, but I have received a different understanding, but if the chair's understanding is correct, we can waive that by 60 votes. And if we fail to waive it, it would come out. But if we waive it and stand up for this process, we will have done something important to protect the appropriations process. So notwithstanding this jurisdictional dispute, I think this is worth doing.
Are there further? Senator Britt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you know, both you and the ranking member, I believe in this committee. I believe in the bipartisan work that it does, and I want us to find ways to preserve and actually take our products to the floor and get those products signed into law. Over the last several weeks, I think we've seen a number of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle be frustrated and use that fact that it needs to be bipartisan. You're even hearing reference of Director Vogt's call to have this be a less partisan exercise. And I would just use this as an opportunity to say, it seems that he's just kind of following some of their lead, because many people on the other side of the aisle would like to get rid of the legislative filibuster. And if we did that, then this committee and the work that we did would be strictly partisan. And so I think we need to be thoughtful about this whole thing and how we preserve it. And you know, words have been used about the legislative filibuster going away, saying from the other side of the aisle that it's anti-democratic, that it's stupid, that it's paralyzing, that it needs to be eliminated. I think that this is just proof that it needs to be preserved, and I hope that my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would stand with us like they stood with you in 2017 when you wrote the letter under the previous Trump administration, Madam Chair, but then many of them changed their position in 2022 when Biden was in office. I think this shows, and the work this committee does shows the importance of it. And I hope that at this point, all of us could stand together and say that it's important to preserve the legislative filibuster. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there further comments?
Madam Chair.
Senator Murphy.
Very briefly, what the Democrats stood for at that moment was not the elimination of the filibuster, but going to a talking filibuster, so the process would be public, and so the people of America could have the chance to weigh in. So I know it's often characterized as it having been presented as an effort to eliminate the filibuster, but that was not actually what was presented.
I will get the gentleman a copy of the letter. Senator Kennedy.
Yes, the amendment says that the work that we do in this committee is subject to only rescissions that are done in this committee, as is being done in this bill, rather than rescissions done under the 1974 Impoundment Control Act.
Seeing no further debate, does the senator seek a roll call vote or voice roll call vote? The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
No.
Senator Murkowski.
No.
Senator Graham.
No by proxy.
Senator Moran. No. Senator Hoven. No. Senator Bozeman. No. Senator Capito. No. Senator Kennedy. No. Senator Hyde-Smith. No. Senator Hagerty.
No by proxy.
Senator Britt. No. Senator Mullen. No. Senator Fisher. No. Senator Rounds. No. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley. Senator Coons. Senator Schatz.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator Murphy.
Aye.
Senator Van Hollen.
Aye.
Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters.
Aye.
Senator Gillibrand.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Ossoff.
Aye by proxy.
Chair Collins.
No. On this vote, there are 14 ayes and 15 nays. The amendment is not agreed to. I would note to my colleagues that the vote has started. I hope that this concludes the amendments. Are there further amendments? If not, the bill will be reported favorably. And I would suggest that we take a 15-minute recess to vote, and then, oh, there are 2 votes, shoot. Well, so much for that plan. Yes, I think what we could do then is everybody go vote, come back. We can start with opening statements on the next bill and start proceeding with our work. But I want to thank everybody. It's really important that we were able to favorably report the Defense Appropriations Bill. And again, my congratulations to Chair McConnell and Vice Chair Coons for your good work. Thank you, and we will just go vote. We won't officially recess. We will now turn to the consideration of the Labor-HHS Education and Related Agencies Bill. The subcommittees worked together and produced a very strong bill under the excellent leadership of Chair Capito and Vice Chair Baldwin, and I very much appreciate their hard work. As I summarized at the outset of this hearing, this bill supports important medical research that enables us to develop more effective treatments, means of prevention, and ultimately cures for diseases like Alzheimer's and diabetes. It also supports substance abuse prevention and treatment programs to help combat fentanyl and other illicit drugs plaguing our communities. This bill also helps our families by investing in education and child care. I'd now like to recognize Vice Chair Murray if she would like to comment on the bill.
Thank you, Chair Collins, and I'll just say quickly thank you to both of our great women chairs, I'll just point that out, who both made it back in time. I'm looking around the table. Thank you, Senator McConnell. But I just will note, for anybody who says women are never on time, just comment. Thank you to both of you for working together to write a bill that makes vital investments in so many programs I strongly believe are at the heart of our nation, from helping families afford childcare and their energy bills to helping our kids get a great education and protecting people's health and safety. I've already spoken on this bill at length, and the bottom line for me that while I wish this bill did more, I'm really glad that it rejects the truly painful cuts that President Trump and House Republicans are seeking and rebukes many of the harmful policies of this administration. So thank you for your great work. I appreciate it.
I will now turn to the subcommittee leadership to present their bill, and we will begin with Chair Capito.
Well, thank you, Chair Collins and Vice Chair Murray, and it's a pleasure to work with you and to work with my Vice Chair, Senator Baldwin. We've both, the shoe's been on the other foot, where I've been her Vice Chair, and so we have a good history, I think, of working together. But for you all, for the Chair and Vice Chair of the full committee, I applaud your steadfast commitment to returning to regular order, and I hope that our work continues onto the floor this week. As we near the end of the subcommittee markups, I'd like to thank my fellow committee members for their input. Believe it or not, we received 12,548 total member requests for the Labor-H Appropriations bill. This bill is always one of the more difficult appropriations bills to negotiate. It's also one of the most consequential, I do think, in everyday lives of every one of our states. This is the third year Senator Baldwin and I have been at the helm of the Labor-H Subcommittee, and I'm pleased to once again present a bipartisan bill to the full committee. The Labor-H bill allocates limited taxpayer resources to key bipartisan priorities at a lower level than fiscal year 2025. The bill includes a number of bipartisan member priorities, such as greater investment in America's biomedical research, childcare, education, mental and rural health, and continued efforts to combat the opioid epidemic, as the chair mentioned. As we work to right-size the federal government, this bill also includes careful, targeted decreases while ensuring that agencies have appropriate staffing levels to carry out their statutory responsibilities. The bill also maintains longstanding riders and excludes any new controversial riders. Our bill provides an increase for the National Institutes of Health to continue prioritizing biomedical research in the United States. This investment includes targeted increases for research in specific areas, such as Alzheimer's, diabetes, Parkinson's, women's health, maternal health, rare diseases, and cancer, including childhood cancer. We have also maintained funding for the NIH IDEA program that provides funding to 23 states that historically had lower levels of NIH funding, including my state of West Virginia. The IDEA program has been so important to West Virginia University and Marshall University. Today's bill also builds on our efforts to combat substance abuse, which remains a serious problem across the nation, and in particular, my home state of West Virginia, by providing for addiction treatment, prevention, research, and recovery programs. The bill also provides resources to support our health workforce. We hear about shortages all over the place, including nurses, geriatric providers, and professionals to respond to the addiction crisis, which will help providers across the country. The Labor-HH bill again prioritizes our children, starting with early childhood, all the way through post-secondary education to make sure that our students are prepared for today's jobs and in the future. The bill also makes critical investments in our workforce to improve outcomes for workers looking to upskill or advance their careers. The bill includes funding for apprenticeship grants to support the administration's goal of creating 1 million active apprenticeships. The bill maintains important funding to support workers' rights and ensure the safety of our workplaces. I've just described several bipartisan programs we have included to improve the lives of Americans, and I encourage my colleagues to support the Labor-H bill. I want to briefly thank all of the staff that worked to put this product together. On Senator Baldwin's staff, and apologies for mispronunciations in advance, Mike Gentile, Mark Laish, Megan Mott, Catherine Tumajan, Aaron Dugan, Amanda Beaumont, and Janie Delaney. On my own staff, I'd like to thank Emily Slack for finally going to bed last night at 3 o'clock in the morning, but she says she's going to sleep well tonight. Catherine Knowles, Elizabeth Joseph, Heather Wadika, and Jordan Lawler. I would like to thank in my personal office the head of my appropriations team, Thompson Moore, Dana Richter, and Mimi Vance for their great hard work. I'd also like to thank those on the full committee staff that have helped our subcommittees, Clint Trocchio, Ben Hammond, and the wonderful GPO team led by Valerie Hutton. So thank you again, Chair Collins and Vice Chair Murray. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Capito. Ranking Member Baldwin is now recognized for her remarks.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking the chair of our subcommittee, Senator Capito, for her partnership in putting this bill together. And of course, the chair and vice chair of our full committee, Senator Collins and Senator Murray, for your leadership ushering these bipartisan bills through these full committee markups. The Labor, Health and Human Services and Education Appropriations Bill is never easy. And the bill we are marking up today is no exception. It is fundamentally a compromise, but it invests in bipartisan priorities to address pressing needs facing families and communities across the country and in states that we all represent. This bill includes a $400 million increase for the National Institutes of Health. This committee has had multiple hearings over the last several months and heard from patients, families, and researchers about the importance of NIH funding. Over decades, this committee has, in a bipartisan manner, prioritized NIH and the research it supports to develop life-saving treatments and cures for devastating diseases. That investment has produced what can only be described as miracles that give millions of Americans hope and more time with their families. This bill increases funding for cancer research instead of, as this administration had proposed, slashing it. It increases funding for research on Alzheimer's, ALS, women's health, diabetes, and rare diseases, just to name a few. Instead of dismantling and shutting down the Department of Education, this bill invests in our local schools and our children's futures. It protects important education funding that all of our states and schools, students, and families across the country rely on. It ensures that funding is allocated to states in a timely manner ahead of the school year so that states and schools can plan for the upcoming year and most effectively use taxpayer dollars. Students and families will only benefit from that certainty. This bill includes an increase for the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, a program I was proud to help create on a bipartisan basis. This 3-digit lifeline supports those in crisis by helping ensure that youth in their hardest and darkest moments have someone they can call who understands their situation. This will save lives, plain and simple. This bill protects and includes modest increases for other important bipartisan priorities. It protects funding for substance use and mental health programs. It includes modest increases for child care and Head Start that support working families while providing quality early learning opportunities for our youngest children. To be clear, more needs to be done to address these issues and others. And that includes doing more to stand up to this administration, like when it takes steps that make it harder for seniors to talk to someone at a Social Security office, or when it forces a Head Start program to close and families to scramble to find childcare because they've needlessly delayed funding, or when the administration haphazardly fires the staff needed to carry out programs that we fund, like in April, when the Trump administration fired all the staff within the CDC's childhood lead poisoning prevention branch. That meant that when the city of Milwaukee encountered a lead crisis in 6 of its schools that displaced 1,800 children, and they called the CDC to ask for the kind of assistance it regularly provides, the CDC had to say they couldn't help because no one worked in that office anymore. This is a step backwards in making government work for families. Or when the administration delays funding for life-saving research. Over the last 6 months, the administration has delayed more than $5 billion in funding for NIH research in every single one of our states. Research can't just be turned on and off like a spigot. This isn't efficient, this wastes taxpayer dollars, and delays treatments and cures. And on top of that, just this week, Russell Vought and the Trump administration tried to prevent NIH from awarding billions more in funding through the rest of the year. Finally, we need to be able to defend the bipartisan bills that we put together. so we can trust that one side won't walk back on these deals months later. I'm deeply disappointed by the decision of a slim partisan majority 2 weeks ago to eliminate funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and I will have more to say about that during this debate. As I said at the beginning of my remarks, this bill is very much a compromise. It's our fundamental duty to the American people that we do not end up in a spiral of full-year CRs, more government shutdown brinkmanship, and partisan packages that rescind funding because the president demands it. To that end, I will continue to push to take the Labor, Health and Human Services, and Education and Defense bills that we're marking up today to the floor in September. This isn't a pipe dream. We brought these two bills to the floor together in 2018, and they were signed into law by September 28th, prior to the start of the fiscal year. We can prove that the appropriation process isn't broken beyond repair. We get to make a choice on our path forward. By supporting this compromise, I'm choosing the one that better serves Wisconsinites and I believe all of our constituents. And finally, I too want to thank the staff who helped put this bill together. That includes the staff for the majority, Emily Slack, Catherine Knowles, Heather Wadika, Elizabeth Joseph, Jordan Lawler, and my staff on the minority, Amanda Beaumont, Aaron Dugan, Janie Delaney, Mike Gentili, Mark Leish, Megan Mott, Catherine Tomasian, and I also want to thank all the other committee staff and the GPO and the CBO who've worked literally around the clock to get to this point. This is a good bill, and I'm proud to have my colleagues' support for it.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin. I would now turn to Chair Capito for the manager's package.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Before I offer the manager's package, I'd like to take a second of personal privilege because just walking into the hearing are three of my grandchildren, Celia, Charlie, and Rose Capito. So let's give them a good show. How about it? You guys wave. Yeah, there they are. Okay, stand up so they can see you. I talk about you all the time. They want to know you exist. There you are. Thanks, guys. All right. Madam Chair, I would like to offer a manager's package containing amendments for the Labor-HHS bill. This package has been negotiated and agreed to by both sides, and I ask that it be adopted by unanimous consent.
Is there objection? Hearing none, the manager's amendment is agreed to. Chair Capito, I have to say, very clever to bring your grandchildren to the markup. I assume there will be no negative amendments now offered to the bill.
Madam Chair?
Are there members who wish to offer amendments? Senator Ossoff.
Madam Chair, I don't have an amendment. I want to express my gratitude to the chair and ranking member for joining me in rejecting the unacceptable effort to defund most of the CDC. The budget request from the White House included a 56% cut to the world's preeminent epidemiological agency. This after the administration has attempted to fire approximately a quarter of the CDC's workforce in recent months, systematic destruction of morale at the CDC, the disbandment of entire agencies focused on maternal health and neonatal health and disease prevention at the CDC. And I made very clear that I would not accept the destruction of the CDC. And I am grateful that Republicans and Democrats on this committee are coming together to defend this vital institution based in the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Are there further comments on the bill or amendment? Senator Baldwin.
I will offer and withdraw an amendment. But before I do, I just wanted to comment on one provision in the manager's package. I am glad that we have taken a step in this manager's package to prevent OMB from implementing a needless policy at NIH to forward fund significantly more of its grants. NIH has not provided any kind of justification for this change other than some vague references to providing certainty for scientists. At the same time, it is terminating thousands of grants for scientists in the middle of their research. We've been hearing from leading cancer organizations, among many others, about just how devastating this plan for multi-year funding would be for their medical research, for patients that count on this research. The scheme would cut the number of grants the agency funds by thousands. NIH itself estimates that this plan would award 4,000 fewer new grants this year than next, a 40% reduction. And what OMB tried to do earlier this week, which was referenced earlier when it tried to withhold billions more in NIH funding through a footnote in a budget document, that should be an eye-opener to all of us. So I'm glad we included this change in the manager's package, and I will keep fighting to ensure that the funding we appropriate for life-saving biomedical research is spent on life-saving biomedical research. Now, Chair Collins, I have an amendment to provide funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting in fiscal year 2026. As I mentioned in my opening remarks, I'm deeply disappointed by the decision of a slim partisan majority 2 weeks ago to eliminate funding for the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I'm offering this amendment today, but will withdraw it and not ask for a vote because I believe that there is a path forward to fix this before there are devastating consequences for public radio and television stations across the country. The specific funding that was rescinded 2 weeks ago was included in the Labor, Health and Human Services, and Education Appropriations bill that passed this committee with overwhelming majorities in the last 2 years. And let me be clear, no one raised a concern about it at the time. No one came to talk to me about it when I chaired the subcommittee. No one mentioned it when we marked up those bills. And then suddenly, this became such an urgent problem that had to be addressed immediately because the president said so. This cut to local public radio will fall hardest on those in rural areas. And stations like WOJB and the Northwoods of Wisconsin, that the Corporation for Public Broadcasting supports the infrastructure and systems that support local radio and stations. Without it, these stations will close. And it will be those in rural areas that are most likely to lose access to public radio and television. That will mean that when there are natural disasters and the only signal being broadcast to impacted areas is over public broadcasting, individuals in those areas will not get those alerts. It will mean that children will have less access to quality educational programming like Daniel Tiger and Sesame Street, and they'll have less access to that, and they'll spend more time on YouTube looking at CoComelon and others. I know that there are majorities in both the House and the Senate that want to fund the CPB. So it's hard to believe that we've ended up in the situation that we're in. And I'm going to continue to work with my colleagues to fix it. So I will withdraw this amendment and not ask for a vote. But before I do, I will yield back to the chair for any other members who would wish to speak on this topic.
Senator Capito.
Thank you. And I'd
Senator
like to thank
Murkowski.
Senator Baldwin for offering the amendment and withdrawing it and understand your concerns. But we all know we litigated this 2 weeks ago, I believe it was, and for quite some hours on the Senate floor, and the Senate voted to rescind these funds. Adopting this amendment would have been contrary to what we have already voted on. I do want to note that the FEMA warning systems will not be impacted because that was an issue that was brought forward, which means our rural communities will still receive those public emergency alerts and warnings. Thank you.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I appreciate that we're able to have hopefully a briefer conversation than we had the night of the rescissions, but again, an opportunity to weigh in on the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and the value that comes to our small rural community-based stations, whether they be radio or public TV. I think people know my position on it. I have recounted the value in my state of public broadcasting. I did vote to move the Labor-HHS bill out of the committee today, even though I have deep concerns about where we are right now with funding for public broadcasting. I do want to acknowledge the efforts that Senator Rounds made the night of the vote-a-rama there on the rescissions, and the commitment that you have received to get some support for our tribal radio stations. I think that that can be helpful, even if it is just a one-year increment. I still have a lot of questions about the proposal, including where the funds are coming from, how much we're talking about, whether this is a one-time deal or a multi-year deal, the eligibility criteria. We're continuing to work to identify that. We're working with the administration. We're working with the Alaska Public Media folks to ensure that our stations can receive this. But I come from a state where we have half the tribes in the United States of America, and of our 26 public radio stations, less than half of them are considered to be tribally owned or serving tribal lands. So these are some things that we're working through, and I share that with you because I want you to know that this senator is not going to stand down when it comes to providing support for these resources, for educational funding, for cultural funding, but also on the emergency side. As you all know, there was really a historic earthquake just off the Russian coast night before last. I was up super late getting the tsunami warning alerts. Those are great. Those are super important. But I got a note from KCAW, which is in Sitka, Alaska, down in southeastern. All up and down the Alaskan coast, there were tsunami concerns, obviously, after an 8.8 earthquake. Sitka was placed under tsunami watch. I'm reading her email here, later downgraded to an advisory before being canceled. KCAW, the public radio station there, was the first and only to report on this in Sitka. They did not receive any notification from NOAA via the EAS, the Emergency Alert System. Our reporters discovered the warning because they talked to public radio down in the Aleutians who did get the warning, did get the alert. They reach out. This is, call it old-fashioned, but when you're in really remote places and scary things are coming your way, you want to figure out every means that you possibly have to communicate there. So KCAW was the only alert system that was active in this community for the duration of the watch and the advisory. And they've shared with me, they're like, Lisa, without federal funding here, our ability to provide for this is very significantly impacted. After the rescissions vote, and again, it was a very clear determination with the votes that we had on that. But I did a reach out. It wasn't me. I had my high school interns contact every public radio station in the state, and we found out that some of our stations are going to be forced to close this year. Some can weather the storm for maybe a year or so. They've got some reserves, but some pretty drastic changes to staffing and program. Some are in the process of figuring out how to move forward. The challenge is they don't have the ability to fundraise in their communities. These are small local communities. The budgets of almost half of the radio stations in Alaska depend 50% or more on CPB funding. 20 of the 26 stations depend at least 30% on the funds. And again, these are the smallest, most rural and economically disadvantaged communities in the state. So I'm not giving up. I appreciate, Senator Baldwin, your effort to work with any of those of us moving forward. I'm going to be spending time during this August break going around to my communities and going into my public radio stations, going into my public TV stations and just saying, how you guys doing? Because I know what I'm going to be getting, and I want to bring the feedback to those of you. So I thank the committee, again, for the effort to resolve things here in a civilized way that's going to allow for a good bill to move forward, but know that this is one of those issues that I'm going to continue to work together with my colleagues, and I appreciate the indulgence of the chair for this amount of time.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to briefly thank Chair Capito, Ranking Member Baldwin for a very strong bill. Like many others here, I want us to keep working on addressing the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. I've heard from a broadcaster in Delaware that may well go under if we do not address this in the future. But two other wonderful things in this bill I wanted to just thank you for. Level funding for AmeriCorps, $1.25 billion, and language that urges the distribution of the grants. This is a long-standing bipartisan program that does great service across our nation and deserves support. And the Act for ALS work that Senator Murkowski and I worked so hard on. One of my closest friends has just developed a very difficult case of ALS. And to know that we are investing $100 million as a nation in ALS research, in addition to all the other critical NIH research, I think is a vital piece of this bill that will bring hope to families all across our nation. Thank you for your work on this bill.
Senator Durbin.
Madam Chairman, I thank you personally, as well as Senator Capito and Senator Baldwin, on the NIH funding. I know that was not an easy assignment to recover those funds. I'd like a point of clarification before I offer an amendment. Perhaps Senator Capito can respond. Is the net result of all the things described by Senator Baldwin and yourself that we actually will increase NIH research funding for the next fiscal year?
Yes, by $400 million.
Thank you. I do want to offer an amendment, Madam Chair, and I ask my staff to please distribute it.
The senator is recognized.
I don't have to tell this gathering the importance of medical research to all of us and the critical reputation of the United States as a leader in medical research around the world. There are many projects that have been arbitrarily frozen or terminated during this calendar year. Billions of dollars in research grants have been halted. Patients and researchers have no idea why. Northwestern University in Chicago conducts the largest volume of NIH-funded research in Illinois, but for 4 months they have not received a penny for their NIH-approved grants. 900 NIH awards to Northwestern have been frozen or terminated, halting $160 million in research to date, including clinical trials. This includes research into the world's smallest pacemaker for newborns with congenital heart defects. That is the #1 congenital illness that infants face in America, heart defects. I know of that issue personally. I can tell you, after your new baby gets that diagnosis, you pray that research is underway. This could happen to any one of your states or research centers. It could hurt any of your families. The University of Alabama, I'm sorry that Senator Britt is not here, but the University of Alabama, Birmingham has had 28 awards canceled or frozen this year, totaling $23 million. I was happy to see Senator Britt send a letter to OMB Director Vaught last week urging the timely release of NIH funds. It was signed by 13 other Republican senators, including the full committee and subcommittee chairs and 5 more Republicans on this committee. How did the OMB respond? On Tuesday, it blocked NIH from awarding grants. That was the reaction of that agency to senators from their own party. It negates what we are doing to find cures for cancer, Alzheimer's, and ALS if we know that down the street they will be frozen. While a federal judge appointed by President Reagan halted some cuts last week, the Trump administration petitioned the Supreme Court to allow them to go through. They are all so desperate to cancel cancer research, they are seeking an emergency appeal in the courts. My amendment would reinstate all grants and awards since January 20th and requires timely disbursement of the awards, except in the case of financial mismanagement. We're going to be eyes wide open. We don't want any grants or awards if there's any question about the integrity or ethics of this research that's going on. It's time to put an end to this chaos. Let me just close by saying this is not a partisan issue. We have thousands, 5,000 grants across the United States that are now in jeopardy because of some decision by this administration to fund some, not fund others, fund some quickly, not fund others. It's almost impossible to follow. When I go through the list of affected senators who are gathered here today, Senator Hyde Smith, University of Mississippi, hospital and university. 5 awards have been canceled or frozen, totaling $1.3 million, including a grant to a researcher developing a novel approach for treating glioblastoma, brain cancer. Do we know this one? You bet we do. Think of Senator Kennedy and Senator McCain. Senator Bozeman, University of Arkansas, 3 awards canceled, totaling $1 million. Arkansas Cancer Coalition, 2 awards canceled, totaling $1 million, including research to reduce cancer death in rural areas. Senator Kennedy, I'm sorry he's not here. LSU has grants and awards totaling $2.4 million, including research to address lung cancer. Senator Moran, you're here. University of Kansas, hospital in Lawrence, 3 canceled or frozen grants totaling $2.5 million, including research on using big data to advance research into women's health. Senator Collins, Maine Health, 2 awards canceled or frozen totaling $323,000, including research to focus on rural health needs. And Mount Desert Island Biological Lab has one $5 million award frozen. My amendment says we should fund these programs that have been waiting and waiting and waiting on a timely basis. Important is the research, but even more important, I think, are the researchers who have to believe that we care for them enough to fund these programs finally, after waiting weeks and days, months for this to happen. So I offer this amendment. I offer it in a bipartisan spirit. We're all in this together.
Senator Capito.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'd like to thank Senator Durbin for offering the amendment, and I understand his concerns. I would also like to thank Senator Britt for the letter that she put together, the bipartisan letter that went to the NIH. And then when the events of earlier on this week occurred, I know Senator Collins, but I know Senator Britt was very active in having those decisions reversed. So I want to particularly point out their efforts. And it is frustrating. There's no doubt about that. I share that. I think we all share that frustration. But this amendment is very broad. It's not just NIH. It goes way beyond that. And so I think it would create some uncertainty and more confusion. And I think every administration has the prerogative to implement new goals and priorities. And at times we've seen this in the past few months, that changing priorities may mean an adjustment in which grants can earn or are earning our federal funding. So I would urge my colleagues to vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Are there others who wish to comment on this amendment? Let me just say that I have worked extremely hard on this issue. The very first hearing that I held as the new chair of this committee was on biomedical research, keeping America's edge in innovation. I totally disagree with the blanket approach, but I believe that Senator Capito makes a very good point about the broad width of this amendment and the fact that we need a more surgical approach. There may be reasons other than financial management, mismanagement, for canceling a grant. But in general, I'm very sympathetic with the goal of this, but believe that it needs more work.
Madam Chair, do I understand correctly that there would be bipartisan support for a provision that simply reinstated all NIH grants?
I would support
say,
that.
I would go back to part of my, if you're asking me, I'm sorry, did Senator Durbin? Yeah. I would say that the argument of that the president needs to be able to and has assertive, and I'm sure past presidents have as well, asserted their prerogatives and priorities to relook at grants, and I think that's what we saw the administration doing. So the answer to that would be no.
Senator Murray.
Thank you, and I want to thank Senator Durbin for offering this really straightforward amendment. We have seen this administration terminate thousands of grants and awards because they claim somehow that they no longer effectuate some kind of agency priority. This is millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars. It has been choked off to each and every one of our states for programs that were approved by this committee on a bipartisan basis. And if that isn't bad enough, the administration has refused to disperse funding to award recipients without any rhyme or reason, just gone. Not telling us why. So I believe this committee does need to assert itself and take action to make sure that our communities get the funding they're owed and that they were counting on. So I support this common sense amendment and appreciate the senator offering it.
Madam Chair,
Senator Durbin.
I was distracted for a moment. I missed the exchange, which I think is critically important, between Senator Ossoff and Senator Capito. I understood Senator Capito to say that this was too broad and too many agencies affected, and I understood Senator Ossoff to say, let's limit it to NIH grants. I'm perfectly willing to do that. We can be very specific and zero in on that, and I want to make sure I understand your position.
Yeah, part two of my opposition to your original amendment was that I believe that the president and an incoming president has the right to set certain priorities and relook at across the board, not just NIH, but everything, to see that they're aligning with the priorities. And so I would oppose Senator Ossoff's narrowing down of the amendment.
Madam Chair.
Senator Baldwin.
I want to thank you, Senator Durbin, for your tireless efforts to raise awareness about these issues in NIH. This administration is canceling thousands of grants across the department and agencies in this bill. And it's also withholding billions of taxpayer dollars that have already been appropriated by this committee. I'm going to mention it again because it was so shocking. 2 days ago, we all read about the OMB footnote fiasco where Russell Vogt paused nearly $15 billion in NIH funding from going out the door. This is just the beginning of the chaos that this administration is going to continue to unleash unless we step up and step in. Russell Vogt is an unelected bureaucrat. He is terminating billions of taxpayer dollars for bipartisan priorities in bills that this committee has passed. And I believe that we can't keep letting him withhold funding that is owed. And so I hope that my colleagues will join me in supporting Senator Durbin's amendment.
Are there others who wish to speak on the amendment? If not, I assume the senator would like a roll call vote. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
Senator McConnell votes no by proxy.
Senator Murkowski. No. Senator Graham.
No by proxy.
Senator Moran.
No by proxy.
Senator Hoeven. No. Senator Bozeman.
No by proxy.
Senator Capito. Senator Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
No.
Senator Hagerty.
No by proxy.
Senator Britt.
No by proxy.
Senator Mullen.
No by proxy.
Senator Fisher.
No by proxy.
Senator Rounds. No. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Coons. Aye. Senator Schatz.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin. Aye. Senator Murphy. Aye. Senator Van Hollen. Aye. Senator Heinrich. Aye. Senator Peters.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Gillibrand.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
No. On this vote, there are 14 ayes and 15 nays. The amendment is not agreed to. Senator Hyde-Smith.
I do have an amendment I would like to offer. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It seeks to protect struggling rural hospitals at risk of losing their critical access hospital designations through the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS. It does that by bringing more transparency to the process. In recent years, rural hospitals across the country have been told they might or will soon lose their critical access hospital status. But many are left scratching their heads wondering why. So my amendment would simply require CMS, prior to terminating a critical access hospital designation, to provide written notification to the House and Senate Appropriations Committees explaining why, provide the committees a detailed analysis of the estimated rural healthcare impact as results of said termination, and for CMS to consult with states, because apparently states consider certain facilities hospitals while CMS does not, such as emergency rooms. I have learned that CMS does not consider hospitals that only provide emergency services to be hospitals. This amendment does not score. It does not affect mandatory or discretionary spending, but it would benefit all members in this room and rural hospitals across the country. So this is an easy one. I'd be comfortable with a voice vote. If there's any objection to that, I ask for a roll call vote. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Capito.
And I appreciate Senator Hyde-Smith's leadership on this issue. We've had a very similar matter in my state with the rural hospital designation. So I share our concerns about ensuring that our rural hospitals are able to continue serving patients in local communities. I understand the need for our rural hospitals to have the continuity that a critical access hospital status provides. So this amendment would provide accountability and transparency for the critical access hospital recertification process within CMS, ensuring CMS is accounting for all consideration in its determination to terminate a hospital's critical access hospital status. So I support this amendment.
Senator Baldwin.
Thank you. Like Senator Hyde-Smith, I care deeply about the rural communities in my home state of Wisconsin. And it's why I opposed the $1 trillion of Medicaid cuts that was passed as part of the budget reconciliation law. I heard from rural hospitals working on very, very tight margins that are now at risk of closure because of those cuts. And this amendment does nothing to address the existential threat that rural hospitals throughout the country are facing because of the Republican budget reconciliation bill. I appreciate that my colleague is trying to fix a very specific issue in her state, but this isn't the way to do it. It's actually not an issue that we routinely address in a Labor-HHS Appropriations bill. In fact, it falls under the jurisdiction of the Finance Committee. I will be voting no on this amendment because I'm concerned about the long-term impact of this language and because I want to do more to provide support for all rural hospitals and make sure that there's quality health care for all rural Americans, not just carve-outs for some. We can and should do more to invest in our rural communities, and I look forward to working with my colleagues to provide real support for all of our rural hospitals.
Madam Chair.
Senator Murray.
Yeah, I want to thank Senator Baldwin for her statement. We all are really concerned about our rural hospitals that are struggling, and I am very concerned about the Medicaid cuts that have been enacted that are going to really make it hard for a lot of our rural hospitals. I have 14 of them in my state that are now at risk. But the problem with this amendment, to be clear, is that it seeks to fix a problem for one rural hospital and ignores the challenges all of our hospitals nationwide are facing, which will only be made worse by the Republicans' cuts to health care. We do need real solutions. I agree with Senator Baldwin. We can't just respond in this committee to one hospital, so I will be voting no on this amendment.
Madam Chairman,
Senator Durbin.
I'm going to try to solve your problems, Senator, because you want to help one hospital and we want to help all critical.
More than one.
Well, I'm suggesting that you amend your amendment, and on page 1, line 4, where it said, as a critical access hospital, and strike the word and put including any hospital that has met. So it covers all the hospitals you want to and all other critical access hospitals. It's going to go way beyond your state to all of our states, if that's what you're looking for. If you make that change, I'll support your amendment.
I'm not sure that I think this amendment does cover other critical access hospitals, the process that they have to go through to designate and redesignate, so that it says this amendment would provide accountability and transportation, I keep saying that, transparency for critical access hospital recertification, and ensure that CMS is accounting for all considerations when it begins to terminate a critical access hospital status. So that, to me, tells me that it does cover every other critical
Senator,
hospital.
it goes
Maybe I'm
on-
misunderstanding your
It goes
question.
on for a page and a half to specify some category of hospitals. What I'm suggesting is critical access hospitals, including her language. So we're not excluding her in what she's seeking, and we're reaching out to all critical access hospitals. At least that's my intent.
Well, it includes all hospitals, but that would have to be scored as well, is my understanding.
Well,
And that would kill.
sure it will be, but.
But this one has,
We're setting out to help all hospitals. Let's
I
make sure
agree,
we
and
do
that's the
it.
reason it includes all
Madam Chair.
hospitals.
Senator Baldwin.
So I've been aware of this issue and this amendment that was in the works for, maybe a day. But we just got the language of this amendment this morning, right before we started the markup. And as I understand it, it is a very technical issue that addresses a particular hospital in Mississippi. But it would be, I think,
All
advantageous to all of us. I understand it has to do with CMS defining distance from another hospital with secondary and primary roads. It's a very technical issue, but it seems like it would serve to all of our advantage to have additional time to study this amendment, and maybe we can try to resolve this before this bill hits the floor rather than today with something that we've only had a couple hours to review.
Yeah, I request a roll call vote.
The senator has that right. Before we take the vote, I just want to encourage Senator Durbin and Senator Hyde-Smith and Senator Capito and Senator Baldwin to work when we go to the floor to see if we can refine this further. Since I actually think you all agree on what the goal is in protecting critical access hospitals nationwide. So if we need to tweak the language, I hope you will continue to working on that goal. There is a request for a roll call vote. Senator Capito, did you want to?
I was just going to say I certainly would look forward to doing that.
Thank you. The clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Murkowski. Senator Graham.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Moran.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hoven.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Bozeman.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Capito. Senator Kennedy.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Hyde-Smith. Senator Hagerty.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Britt.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Mullen.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Fisher.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Rounds.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Murray.
No.
Senator Durbin.
No.
Senator Reed.
No.
Senator Shaheen.
No by proxy.
Senator Merkley.
No by proxy.
Senator Coons.
No by proxy.
Senator Schatz.
No by proxy.
Senator Baldwin. No. Senator Murphy. Senator Van Hollen. Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters.
No by proxy.
Senator Gillibrand.
No by proxy.
Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
Aye.
Senator Murkowski.
Aye.
This is just power politics.
It is power politics.
It's like, this bill is in the eye of the.
Exactly.
On this vote, there are 16 ayes and 13 nays. The amendment is agreed to. Are there further
Madam Chair.
amendments? Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have an amendment that I think will be distributed on the Social Security Administration. As it's handed out, I just want to thank Senator Baldwin for her efforts to provide funding in this bill for public radio and the Corporation of Public Broadcasting. I was glad to see there may be an effort to put something in before the bill gets to the floor. That, I think, would be very important. This is an amendment that deals with the challenge which is identified in the bipartisan committee report regarding service delivery at the Social Security Administration. And I'm just going to read what the committee found. The committee notes that there are significant service delivery challenges at SSA that are impacting critical services that millions of Americans rely on. This amendment would help address that issue by providing $90 million to help strengthen customer service. It's very clear that this function has been under-resourced for a long time. That's been the testimony we've received from folks at the Social Security Administration. The situation was made much worse, I think we all recognize, during the early days of the Elon Musk Doge effort. And there were efforts to essentially take a chainsaw, that's Elon Musk's metaphor, not mine, to important services there. And the results were a denial of important customer service to millions of our constituents who were seeking answers regarding Social Security and other benefits. There was a huge drop in the number of calls even answered. Those that were answered had very long wait times. Then you may remember they had an issue with the website crashing. Then they tried to assign people from different regional officers to fill the gap. So there's a real need to make sure our constituents can get answers regarding their benefits. The $90 million comes from OMB, and I want to take 1 second just to explain this. As part of the fiscal year 26 request that we're reviewing here, FISG will review, Russ Vought, the director of OMB, while he's calling for cuts to all the other agencies, is asking for a 13% increase in his budget. While he's calling for people to be fired from other agencies, he's asking for more people at OMB. That will be a decision this committee reaches with respect to fiscal year 26. But on top of that, in the reconciliation bill, there was something we'd never done before. There was a mandatory spending of $100 million to OMB, which is almost double its current budget. Almost double its current budget. No explanation for what this was going to be used for, why it was needed. We all ask questions. So what this amendment does is, in order to help our constituents get better service delivery through the Social Security Administration, which took a big hit because of the Elon Musk operation, that we take monies from this unaccountable fund at OMB to make sure that we address that purpose. And I ask my colleagues for their support, and I ask for a roll call vote.
Senator Capito.
Thank you, and I want to thank Senator Van Hollen. I know I've heard him speak on Social Security more than a few times, and I know he is offering this out of his great concern. And so I think Senator Baldwin and I reflect that concern in our bill, in our fiscal 2026 Labor-H bill in its current form. It provides adequate funding, I believe, Social Security for administrative expenses. It's $100 million more than it was last year. The report also includes language to note that in the language part of the bill, to note that the purpose of this funding is to support staffing needs at the agency. In other words, we don't want to see it diverted, even though IT is a big question over there, diverted to exclusively to IT. So I think this amendment basically duplicates steps that we are taking in the base bill, and so I would urge my colleagues to vote against the amendment.
Are there
Madam
other comments?
Just very, very briefly. This is an account I think we've all sort of paid attention to for a while. It is chronically underfunded. All you have to do is talk to former Social Security Administration O'Malley, administrator. So I do appreciate the steps the committee's taken, but given the hit that this function and mission took early on, there's a lot of damage to be repaired, and I think that they need the $90 million a lot more than the OMB needs an additional slush fund outside their normal fiscal year budget. So I would ask for the vote.
Are there any other comments? I will just make one quick one, and that is I very much appreciate the additional funding that has been put into the bill to improve customer service at SSA. This has been a terrible problem in the state of Maine, and the additional funding in the subcommittee bill clearly is needed. I look forward to reviewing very carefully OMB's budget as part of the FSGG subcommittee bill that is produced for many of the reasons that the senator from Maryland has said, the 13% increase at a time when other budgets are being cut in on top of the money that was in the reconciliation bill. But I do think that the chair and ranking member have invested in customer service by adding the $100 million, I believe it is, in the underlying bill. Any other comments? If not, Senator Murkowski.
Just for point of information, how much is this increase that is included in the bill? What are we above the president's budget on this?
President's budget was level, and so we're $100 million above the president's budget. So substantial.
Thank you.
With that, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
No by proxy.
Senator Murkowski.
No.
Senator Graham.
No by proxy.
Senator Moran.
No by proxy.
Senator Hoeven.
No by proxy.
Senator Bozeman.
No by proxy.
Senator Capito. No. Senator Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Senator Hyde-Smith. Senator Hagerty.
No by proxy.
Senator Britt.
No by proxy.
Senator Mullen.
No by proxy.
Senator Fisher.
No by proxy.
Senator Rounds.
No by proxy.
Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Merkley.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Coons.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Schatz.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin. Senator Murphy. Senator Van Hollen. Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Gillibrand.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
No. On this vote, the ayes are 14, the nays are 15. The amendment is not agreed to. Are there further amendments? Senator Murphy.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I voted no on the underlying budget that we're debating here today, and it's not because I don't appreciate the tremendous work that the chair and the ranking member of the subcommittee and the full committee have done. I understand there's a lot of really important, hard-fought compromise in this piece of legislation. My worry is simply that the president is going to ignore the will of Congress that's expressed in this legislation. And I think that that's an incredibly relevant and present conversation for this Congress to have and for this committee to have. It happens in a number of ways. Obviously, we saw it through the extraordinary use of rescissions. I appreciate, Madam Chairman, your comments earlier today about the potential for a second rescissions package that would, maybe even ignore or work around the ability of Congress to debate and vote on that. And I hope that you are persuasive in that measure. There's also the extraordinary shifting of funds that happens inside these budgets, and the budget that Senator Britt and I wrote last Congress for the Homeland Security Department. The administration just took $600 million that was dedicated for non-detention and just declared that it would now be eligible for detention. We've never seen that at that kind of scale before. And then there's this problem of the money that we are appropriating being used for purposes that are totally disconnected from the statutes, from the authorizing statutes. And that's the amendment that I'm going to put before the committee today and ask for a roll call vote. The Department of Education has the ability through the Office of Civil Rights to, through a process laid out in statute and in regulation, bring enforcement actions against universities that they don't believe are complying with the statute. But as we have all watched, this administration is cutting off funding for universities, allegedly using the civil rights statute without going through any of the prescribed processes that we have put in law and previous administrations have put into regulation. Most extraordinary is this April 11th letter that was sent to Harvard University telling them that they would lose all federal funding if they didn't comply with a very specific set of demands. One of them is a demand entitled viewpoint diversity. And what they're essentially saying here is that unless this particular university rearranges its hiring so that they hire professors that have a viewpoint diversity approved by the Department of Education, they will lose federal funding. There is nowhere in statute that allows for the administration to withhold federal funding based upon an objection to the viewpoints that faculty hold. On the merits, there's no justification for the withholding of funding based upon that complaint. But even worse, the administration went through no process that is laid out in law and in regulation to give the administration and to give the public the ability to contest and provide input. So I think this is a really relevant matter for this committee. I think the extraordinary ways this administration is ignoring the law or going around the law requires us to do due diligence in making sure that when we appropriate money, it gets used for the proper purposes. And so this amendment that I have before the body just says that the administration cannot use the money appropriated for the Office of Civil Rights until their Inspector General comes to a simple conclusion that when they are carrying out enforcement actions against universities like Harvard, that they just simply go through the processes and procedures laid out in statute. We can debate the merits, but at the very least, we should be requiring the administration to not go around the processes that we have set out. If they went through those processes, it would be a lot easier for us, for the university, for the public, to litigate whether or not this administration has any right in order to withhold funding just because they think there are too many liberal professors on campus. And I will just say, if this does become normalized, if the President of the United States gets to deny funds to universities because they don't like particular political viewpoints of the student body or of the faculty, that is a Pandora's box that is hard to ever again close. And no Republican on this committee would want a Democratic president cutting off funds to their state universities just because they think that there are too many conservative voices on campus. So I appreciate you letting me explain this amendment, and I would ask for a roll call vote.
Senator Capito.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Murphy, for your amendment, which I strongly oppose for a lot of different reasons. But let's just go back and see what was happening on our campuses, particularly in the Northeast, in terms of anti-Semitism. rampant, I think, violation of civil rights of many students on those campuses. And some of those higher education institutions have come to the table with the administration and said, yes, we're going to make changes. And that's because of the violations of the office of what is under the Office of Civil Rights under Title VI. When the former president's Secretary of Education came before this committee, I pointedly asked him, do you have a staff member, have you been, this is right in the heat of it all, to Columbia University? No, we didn't send anybody there. What kind of enforcement is that when your families and Jewish students don't even feel safe on their own campus? So your amendment would halt the work of the Office of Civil, and you say a simple statement, but your amendment basically says you would do a review of all actions towards institutions of higher education that have taken place this year. The inaction that was taken in the previous administration actually troubles me a lot. And the inaction at the highest levels of higher education to let this happen, I never thought I'd see anything like this again. When my dad went across the ocean in World War II to save a nation, a world from anti-Semitism. So I think to try to halt the Office of Civil Rights, to me, at this point in time where we find ourselves, even if you say it's just for a short period of time, what in government ever takes a short period of time? I mean, that doesn't exist here. So I would say it's contrary to the purpose of the office to pause investigations, and I would oppose your amendment.
Madam Chair?
Senator Ossoff.
I'm not sure if I'm the only Jewish member of the committee, but I just want to say for the record that I utterly reject this administration's cynical exploitation of this issue, which it uses as a fig leaf to take control of and impose its will on institutions of higher education and other critics. Thank you.
Are there other members who wish to comment on the amendment?
Madam President.
Senator Murray.
I just want to support the senator's amendment. It just simply requires that the OIG certify that all enforcement actions taken against colleges are in compliance with those laws. It's pretty simple, and I urge our members to vote for it.
With that, seeing no further members seeking to speak, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
No by proxy.
Senator Murkowski. No. Senator Graham.
No by proxy.
Senator Moran.
No by proxy.
Senator Hoeven.
No by proxy.
Senator Bozeman.
No by proxy.
Senator Capito. No. Senator Kennedy.
No by proxy.
Senator Hyde-Smith. Senator Haggerty.
No by proxy.
Senator Britt.
No by proxy.
Senator Mullen.
No by proxy.
Senator Fisher.
No by proxy.
Senator Rounds.
No by proxy.
Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Reed. Aye. Senator Shaheen.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Merkley.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Coons.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Schatz.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator Murphy.
Aye.
Senator Van Hollen.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Heinrich.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Peters.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Gillibrand.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
No. On this vote, there were 14 ayes and 15 nays. The amendment is not agreed to. Are there other members who wish to offer an amendment to this bill? Seeing no further amendments, the bill will be reported as amended. I want to close this meeting by, again, taking a moment to thank all the members of the committee and our staffs for all of their hard work, including the full committee staffs on both sides of the aisle who worked very closely with the subcommittee staffs. We've now reported 8 of the 12 annual bills with strong bipartisan support. And I would note that if you add those 8 bills together, They comprise approximately 87% of all discretionary spending. So we're making good progress, and we have to keep moving forward. I'd now like to recognize Vice Chair Murray for any closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Chair Collins, and thank you to all of our colleagues who worked really hard, as well as our staffs, to make this mark possible. Once again, as Senator Collins said, we have shown that when we work together in a bipartisan way, we can write bills that actually invest in our communities, reject damaging cuts from Trump, and set the country up for success. We do have more work ahead of us, but as the chair noted, it is notable that we have now passed 8 of our bills on a bipartisan basis. That's a clear sign that there is a bipartisan path to fund the government and to reject painful cuts and chaos. So I look forward to continuing that process and working in a bipartisan way to pass our full year spending bills.
Thank you, Vice Chair Murray. The committee does plan to continue on a dual track, advancing bills on the floor and through this committee. This meeting of the committee is now adjourned.